Oil price, 23rd of May 2023, Afghanistan, can China achieve its long-term occupation objectives? China and Pakistan were armed and provided logistical support for the Taliban during the conflict in Afghanistan when the United States was present. At a trilateral meeting in Islamabad on May 9, the foreign ministers of China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan agreed to extend the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, into Afghanistan. They reaffirmed their support for ongoing multilateral infrastructure projects, such as the Central Asia-South Asia (CASA) power project and the Trans-Afghan Railways, People's Republic of China Ministry of Foreign Affairs, FMPRC, May 9. The Taliban regime signed an agreement with the Xinjiang Central Asia Petroleum and Gas Company, CAPEIC, a subsidiary of the state-owned China National Petroleum Corporation, CNPC, for the extraction of oil from the Amu Darya basin on January 5, Kabul Now, January 5. Under the terms of the agreement, China will invest $150 million annually for 3 years and $540 million for the duration of the 25-year contract. Then, on April 13, the Ministry of Mines and Petroleum of Afghanistan announced that the Chinese company Gachan had expressed interest in investing $10 billion in Afghanistan's lithium reserves. Kabul Now, April 13. China is reportedly negotiating with the Taliban regime to renegotiate the terms of a 2008 contract to mine copper from the Mesinok reserves in the province of Logar, the print, June 8, 2022. The expanding role of China in Afghanistan confronts formidable obstacles. The agreements, including plans to extend CPEC, an essential element of China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, that traps countries in high-interest debt, into Afghanistan, are a significant development. The agreement concerning hydrocarbon extraction in the Amu Darya basin is the Taliban regime's first effective foreign investment agreement. However, important Chinese projects have failed to launch in the past. Will the recent transactions also remain in limbo? Limited engagement by China for the time being as the foundation is built. In the 1980s, except for covert support for the U.S. equipping of the Mujahideen, the People's Republic of China, PRC, maintained a distance from its turbulent neighbor. Despite sharing a border with Afghanistan for decades, China remained essentially uninvolved in the country's affairs. In addition, Beijing had no official diplomatic relations with the first Taliban regime, 1996 to 2001. Observer Research Foundation, ORF, August 6, 2019. While Beijing revived diplomatic relations with Kabul following the Taliban's ouster in 2001, its influence in Afghanistan remained minor, particularly compared to the United States and other major powers. It had few interests in Afghanistan to safeguard or advance at the time. In addition, the PRC did not wish to be subordinate to the United States and did not dispatch troops to support U.S.-led counterinsurgency operations in Afghanistan. Indian Council of World Affairs, April 20, 2022. Even its support for the reconstruction of Afghanistan was modest, with China providing just $240 million in financial assistance between 2001 and 2013. Institute of South Asian Studies, ISAS, June 25, 2021. Comparatively, the United States allocated $146.68 billion between 2001 and 2020 for Afghan relief and reconstruction. Special Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction. China's interests in Afghanistan are now exploiting Afghanistan's wealth because China's mineral wealth has been depleted. China became interested in Afghanistan only after Afghan President Hamid Karzai announced the opening of Afghanistan's energy, mineral, and raw materials sectors to foreign investment. Eurasia Review, May 18, 2010. The natural resource wealth of Afghanistan is estimated to be between $1 and $3 trillion. Global Times, September 14, 2021. China Metallurgical Group Corporation, MCC, was awarded a contract in 2007 to mine copper from Messinok, the second-largest copper deposit in the world. China's $3 billion investment commitment was the largest foreign investment solicitation to date, China Daily, August 13, 2018. In 2011, China National Petroleum Corporation, CNPC, and its Afghan partner, Watan Oil and Gas, acquired the rights to 3 oil blocks in the Amu Darya basin, with intentions to invest $700 over the next 5 years. Tolo News, December 26, 2011. Other infrastructure-related contracts followed. Stability in Afghanistan is necessary not only for the success of Chinese investments and economic interests but also for the security situation in Xinjiang's western region. Beijing has perceived a developing risk of Uyghur separatism in Xinjiang since the 1990s. Some Uyghur militants, whom the PRC attributes to the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, ETIM, have reportedly sought refuge in Afghanistan, where they are allegedly allied with the Taliban and al-Qaeda. International experts question the existence of ETIM as a coherent militant organization. See China Brief, February 11, 2022, and the U.S. government removed the group's terrorist designation in October 2020 due to a lack of evidence for its continued existence, RFA, November 5, 2020. However, the PRC continues to view Uyghur militancy in Afghanistan as a significant threat, viewing the security situation in its Central Asian neighbor through the lens of its long-standing struggle against the 3 evil forces of ethnic separatism, religious extremism, and violent terrorism. Xinhuanet, June 13, 2019. Since the early 2000s, Beijing has been concerned that Uyghur militant groups and their allies could use their battlefield experience in Afghanistan against Western and Afghan government forces to target China. Consequently, China has placed a greater emphasis on Afghanistan's stability over the past 2 decades. As the director of the Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies, Dawood Muradian, explained in 2015, this led Beijing to associate its internal security policy with the stability in Afghanistan, Anadolu Agency, January 24, 2015. Strategic considerations also played a role in Afghanistan. China was apprehensive about the increased American presence and influence in Afghanistan after 2001. However, this concern was subordinate to the nation's desire for Afghan stability. Consequently, it did not object to U.S. counterinsurgency efforts, opting to freeride on its efforts to stabilize Afghanistan. Growing fears, China's expanding role in Afghanistan is viewed as a menace to the civilized world. China was no longer able to play the role of a passive observer. The situation in Xinjiang deteriorated, as evidenced by the rioting in Urumqi in July 2009 and the attack by Uyghur militants on a police station in Hotan, southern Xinjiang, in 2011, ORF, August 6, 2019. As the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, was launched in 2013, Chinese economic interests in the region expanded. Due to its location along the BRI, Afghanistan's development and stability were crucial to the initiative's success. The Chinese government was anxious to include Afghanistan in the BRI, and in 2016 the 2 countries signed a Memorandum of Understanding in which Beijing committed to investing approximately $100 million in infrastructure projects, FMPRC, May 2016. However, this investment did not materialize, The Hindu, July 5, 2022. In fact, Beijing's plans for mineral and hydrocarbon extraction from Messinok mines and Amu Darya reserves were also unsuccessful. Persistent instability in Afghanistan was a factor in the failure of Chinese construction projects, as the Chinese occupier requires constant compensation to ensure his safety. The announcement by U.S. President Barack Obama in 2012 that American troops would begin to withdraw from Afghanistan beginning in 2014 added to Chinese concerns. This demonstrated to the Chinese that they could no longer rely on the United States to stabilize Afghanistan. The impending U.S. withdrawal prompted China to change its Afghan policy from calculated indifference to strategic engagement, ORF, August 6, 2019. China's strategic engagement in Afghanistan is ill-conceived and fraught with the risk of backlash, as Afghans perceive them to be exploiters. The Foreign Ministry appointed veteran diplomat Sun Yuxi as Special Envoy for Afghan Affairs in 2014, China Daily, July 18, 2014, as the PRC became more proactive in promoting stability in Afghanistan. In October 2015, Beijing hosted the Heart of Asia Conference, where Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi urged relevant countries to facilitate the resumption of negotiations between the Afghan government and the Taliban. Global Times, December 10, 2015. Subsequently, China intensified its mediation efforts, encouraging the Ashraf Ghani government and Taliban officials to engage in direct dialogue and leveraging its close ties with Pakistan to enlist its support in the negotiation process. Express Tribune, March 13, 2015, ISIS, June 25, 2021. Parallelly, Beijing engaged in bilateral and multilateral cooperation with the United States, Russia, and regional powers. The Taliban's capture of Kunduz in September 2015 emphasized to Beijing that the situation in Afghanistan was swiftly deteriorating and that it needed to intervene with greater vigor and speed. Notably, China began providing the Ghani government with military support. In July 2015, it began providing military equipment and instruction to Afghan soldiers. Dawn, July 11, 2015. China provided the Afghan government with over $70 million in military assistance in 2016, Press, March 1, 2016. South China Morning Post, August 28, 2018, reports that the PRC assisted Afghanistan in constructing a military mountain brigade for deployment in the Wakhan corridor bordering Xinjiang. Even as China supplied the Ghani government with military equipment, it continued communicating with Taliban insurgents. The difficulty exists between China and the Taliban regime due to China's support for the Pakistani government-backed Taliban. Afghanistan Taliban is independent and has no desire to cooperate with Pakistan because they despise Pakistanis. Therefore, when the Taliban seized power on August 15, 2021, China was in a superior position than other powers to collaborate with the new regime. Beijing swiftly adopted the power transition, refrained from condemning the Taliban's seizure of power, and kept its embassy open until the fall of Kabul, August 16, 2021, Xinhua. Although it has not been officially recognized, the Islamic Emirate can maintain diplomatic representation in Beijing. Global Times, June 23, 2022. Beijing's aid, trade, and other support are a veritable lifeline for the Taliban regime, which has yet to receive international recognition from any country and remains isolated under enormous economic pressure. China Brief, October 4, 2022. In global forums, China has advocated for Afghanistan, advocating for the unfreezing of American-owned Afghan assets and lifting sanctions and other restrictions. Global Times, December 23, 2021, Global Times, June 17, 2022. Today, unlike in 2002, China is eager to play a significant role in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, China is the dominant entity now that the United States has withdrawn. In addition, Beijing hopes to advance its substantial but largely unrealized economic interests in the nation. Within months of the Taliban's return to power, contracts were reviewed and approved for projects such as Masinok and Amu Darya that had stalled under Republican administrations. For the Chinese economy, gaining access to Afghanistan's lithium reserves is a top priority. Additionally, Chinese companies have expressed interest in investing in the agricultural and infrastructure sectors, including power projects and industrial parks. Global Times, April 28, 2022, Global Times, August 26, 2022. However, according to Afghan officials, Chinese merchants visit the country, make inquiries and conduct feasibility studies but do not return to invest. Japan Times, September 27, 2022. As in Afghanistan, disagreements are resolved by a rifle barrel, which frightens Chinese investors. Instability and insecurity are obstacles to advancing ambitious plans. Islamic State Khorasan Province, ISKP, attacks have increased in Afghanistan despite the cessation of hostilities. Unfortunately for the Chinese, they are in the sights of the ISKP. China is in the ISKP's pictures. ISKP propaganda has harshly criticized Chinese oppression of Uyghur Muslims and has accused China of imperialism, referring to China's BRI projects throughout the developing world. Terrorism Monitor, November 18, 2022. Notably, ISKP's attacks against China include physical assaults and verbal threats. The ISKP attacked a Kabul hotel frequented by Chinese officials, merchants, and students on December 12, 2022, Global Times, December 13, 2022. This was followed on January 11 of this year by a suicide attack on the Afghan Foreign Ministry building, where Taliban officials were meeting with an official Chinese delegation. Al Jazeera, January 11. China is a critical component of the ISKP's strategy to weaken the Taliban regime and undermine its efforts to revitalize the Afghan economy by courting Chinese investment. These attacks also appeal to hardline Taliban cadres, global jihadists, and Uyghur Muslims by portraying the Islamic State as the proper guardian of jihad, unafraid to confront China. The ISKP aims to reap the benefits of this strategy by recruiting Muslims who are outraged by China's treatment of Uyghurs. Are the Taliban a dependable ally for China? Beijing is also concerned about the potential threat of EDM and other Uyghur militants operating from Afghanistan. A related concern is whether the Taliban regime will take action against these organizations. The Taliban's track record in this regard is not encouraging. Although it ensured that its Uyghur militant allies did not assault China during its first regime and the insurgency, it sheltered them. In the months following the Taliban's return to power, China pressured them to close compounds in Afghanistan's Badakhshan province that an Uyghur militant group allegedly operated. Nonetheless, the Taliban merely relocated these shelters away from the China border. Referral, October 5, 2021. According to a 2022 United Nations report, the ITM's operational space has expanded in Afghanistan, with the group aligning with local Taliban commanders and purchasing weapons from them to bolster its terrorist activities capabilities. Japan Times, September 27, 2022. The Taliban will likely refrain from clamping down on Uyghur militants, particularly in light of ISKP propaganda accusing them of not defending Uyghur Muslims. In addition, the Taliban do not want disgruntled Uyghur combatants to join ISKP or Taliban members to defect to ISKP. Additionally, the presence of Uyghur militants in Afghanistan gives the Taliban leverage over China. Therefore, the regime is unlikely to resolutely crack down on them, as Beijing mandates. Xinhua, September 10, 2021. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, threatens Chinese enterprises and nationals. The anti-Pakistan TTP has targeted Chinese consulates, CPEC, and Chinese citizens in Pakistan to undermine the Pakistani government and economy. Dawn, November 14, 2018. Also susceptible to attack are Chinese enterprises in Afghanistan. Global Times, September 18, 2021. Nevertheless, the TTP may not wish to provoke the Taliban regime at this time for fear of losing its patronage and haven on Afghan soil. Therefore, the TTP may prefer targeting Chinese interests in Pakistan rather than in Afghanistan. Will Beijing's plans be realized? China provides the Taliban regime with humanitarian assistance, economic deals, and military equipment, including blowfish attack drones. 19 January China brief. Humanitarian aid and economic development initiatives could alleviate some of Afghanistan's suffering. If effectively implemented, recent deals are anticipated to generate tens of thousands of new jobs. Nevertheless, doubts persist. Given the dire security situation in Afghanistan, smaller Chinese businesses may survive, but it will be difficult for significant projects to get off the ground. China faces far more terrorist organizations than the United States did in Afghanistan. In addition, Beijing's intentions for Afghan stability include the consolidation of Taliban rule. This is a questionable premise because the Taliban is not a dependable ally. Involving Pakistan in securing and stabilizing Afghanistan is a non-starter, as Pakistan is embroiled in unrest and instability and can hardly put out flames next door.